Welcome, fabricators. Today, we're going to be talking about database mirroring, but we're not just talking about database mirroring. We're talking about how we troubleshoot setting up database mirroring on Tales from the Field.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good.
Mirroring in Microsoft Fabric is just taking people by storm. No more setting up one set of ingestion pipelines to be able to forklift data into Microsoft Fabric. No need to be able to figure out at each individual little table how we're going to get those deltas and do incremental workload pipelines. We're just going to go in, set it up, and if we want to, we can even copy every new table that's being created. So I'm going to show you 5 different ways that we can mess up when we're setting up Microsoft Fabric mirroring for Azure SQL database. These are the things to check for to make sure things are working properly in the way you want to. By the way, if this is your first time finding your way over to Tales from the Field, give us a like and give us a subscribe. We drop contents on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. All right, let's get over that great content. All right, I'm in SQL Server Management Studio, and I've got my database that I want to mirror from my B-Ball Logical SQL Server, my movies database. Coming over to Microsoft Fabric, let's go ahead and let's create that mirrored database. I'm going to go up to New Items, get to the new menu. I'm going to type in MI for mirroring, and then I'm going to select Mirrored Azure SQL Database. Now, once we click on this, let's go ahead and see that we get an error. Upgrade to paid Microsoft Fabric capacity. I'm in a trial capacity, but I know trials should work for mirroring. But let's go ahead and follow this. So I'm going to go over to my Azure. I'm going to create a Fabric capacity. I'm going to select a resource group. I've already created Fabric capacity. Let's call this exactly what it is. Something simple. Fabric loves mirroring. I'm going to leave the default region, which is the region that my Fabric capacity is in. I'm going to go ahead and click Create. And I'm going to start deploying this. Once this is deployed, I want to check something real quick. I want to make sure and go to the Fabric capacity. It's going to be running by default, but I want to make sure that it's running, that it's not paused, but we'll come back and pause it if we need to. We've got that capability. Coming back over to Microsoft Fabric, let's go and create a new workspace because we want to associate it with our capacity. I'm going to call this TFTF capacity, go into advanced. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and you'll see there's a Fabric capacity and there's my Fabric loves mirroring capacity. Let's go ahead and click apply. I'm going to get some screen real estate back by closing the taskbar, the task flow bar, and I'm going to click new. I'm going to type in SQL this time. There's SQL mirrored databases, and I'm going to click on this, upgrade to a paid Fabric capacity. I just upgraded to a free Fabric capacity to a paid Fabric capacity. So let's take a little bit closer look at this. If I go to the question mark in About Power BI, I can see the region that I'm currently listed for my Fabric capacity. Now, I did this on purpose. Even though this is in the central US, if we go ahead and let's move this to the side a little bit, and then let's take a look at the documentation. What I want to see is what are the limitations, and specifically in the limitations, we see supported regions. Now, I am in the central US. I did this on purpose. I grabbed this as this was rolling out, so that way I could show you what happens if the bits have not landed. Now, in this case, I'd want you to open a support ticket, but we're going to pretend I'm in a region where Fabric capacity is not supported. So what do I need to do? First, I need to pause because I don't want to pay for a Fabric capacity I'm not going to use. I'm going to create and provision a new Fabric capacity, and I'm going to do this using the Fabric capacity resource group, and then I'm going to enter my name, Fabric loves mirroring 2, and this time for the region, I'm going to go to East US 2. This is one of the first regions where mirroring rolled out, and I know all the bits are there. So let's go ahead and let's review and create. We'll create this capacity. I'm going to do the same check. Once this is provisioned, I want to go and validate that it is running. I see that it is. Let's go ahead and flip back over to Fabric and let's create a new workspace. We're going to call this one TFTF mirroring. I'm going to go to advanced. And once again, we're going to scroll down to Fabric capacity. And you can see I selected my Fabric loves mirroring 2 in East US. Let's go ahead and click apply, create this workspace. And I'm going to get some more real estate back. We'll close the task flows. We'll close the help bar. I'm going to create a new item. And I'm going to type in MI. There's my mirroring for Azure SQL database, little Fabric magic, because we've got it this time. So I select the Azure SQL database. I put in my bball database.windows.net. My movies database, I'm going to sign in with my organizational account because that's the way I want to authenticate. And once I do this, I'm going to click connect. This should connect to the data source. And we see we're unable to retrieve the SQL Server managed identity. Please turn on the system managed identities and set it as the primary identity for your SQL Server. Okay, so I didn't do this when I provisioned the SQL Server. It's easy to miss this step, but the way you turn this on is you come back to the Azure portal, you go to identity, and you make sure to turn this on. Now, this is very important because it's going to use this object ID to be able to register permissions in Microsoft Fabric. So once this updates and I see it's going, one of the things we can even do is we can check this with the DMV, sysdm server managed identities. If we run this, it'll show our client ID, our tenant ID. Don't share those. Those are sensitive. But we can see that we've got this up and running. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to a system that I already provisioned with a system user managed identity. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to use my movies database organizational account. We're going to go ahead and approve. And once this happens, we're going to go ahead and connect. Keep in mind this little note, we've got the Fabric magic going on, but once I uncheck that select all, we're no longer mirroring all automatically created tables. I'm going to get my domestic movie table. We're getting 3 tables in total: movie info, movie sentiment. Let's go ahead and click connect. And what we'll find is that everything's going just fine. We're going to make us our movie mirrors, create our database, and then once this approves, let's take a look and monitor our replication. Now I can refresh this and see my objects are here, but I don't have rows yet. So let's go back over those DMVs. There's a couple different things we want to look at. Sysdm exec change feed. First off, this has a lot of great info in it, but the number one thing I'm looking for is the status column. I want this status to be 4. If the status is 4, that means everything is okay and everything is running good. We also have sys change feed log scan, which will tell us the information for the change feeds as they're occurring and data is flowing over. And then we've got one more, sysdm change feed errors. Shouldn't be anything in there right now, but we're going to come back to this one. So everything's running, everything looks good. And I can see I've got a host of tables with different row counts in them. Now I'm going to go to manage permissions because this is another big one. You can see this is where this user managed identity is getting read-write permissions. If it doesn't have read-write permissions, that status will not be 4 and you will not be replicating data over. So that's just one more thing to check. The other, we've got some new functionality on changing a table name and having that replicate and copy over in mirroring. But I'm going to show you, we change movie info to movie information, but because I unchecked that box, things aren't going to go the way we wanted it to. So I can see this is working. Let's go back over and monitor replication in my Microsoft Fabric. Boom, I've got this error because we unchecked that select all. We unchecked those automatic mirrors. So what do we got to do? Well, we've got to come in and manually select movie information because it's not flowing through automatically. And then we need to uncheck movie info because that table no longer exists. And so now if I take a look at this, I can see we actually had some errors in sys change feed errors. But I want to go back and look at this change feed again, validate that for my movie information table, sure enough, my state is 4. Now I can come back over, take a look at replication, monitor my replication, boom, everything is wonderful and everything is working. So we covered 5 different errors. The first one was we have an issue with the error messages. Mirroring does not require a paid subscription. If you're in a trial capacity, you're going to work just fine using database mirroring. So what's the next thing we want to check? Well, we want to check to see if we're in an unsupported region. If we're in an unsupported region, doesn't matter whether we have a paid Fabric capacity or we have a Fabric capacity on a trial. Mirroring will not work. Next up, we need to make sure that we have our systems assigned managed identity turned on our logical SQL server for our Azure SQL database. Without that, we're not going to be able to grant the proper permissions in our Microsoft Fabric workspace, and mirroring also will not work. And then finally, if we use the functionality that we've just added in mirroring to be able to change a table's name, and we don't have automatic updates flowing through, then we're going to have to manually change that table name, and we're going to have to deselect the old table name. So I love mirroring. It is a fantastic technology. No more building those ETL pipelines to forklift data in. No more figuring out how am I going to get the deltas and the changes from my tables and then make those incremental update pipelines and then worry about the refresh capacity. But it's important to know how to be able to set this up correctly. So you know where we want to keep this going, down in the comments. Sound off. Is this helpful? Have you ran into any of these errors? We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us on Tales from the Field. As always, be good to one another out there. Bye, everyone.
Head full of flies, so here come the clouds. They'll never stop unless I can